Welcome to the AHEAD Spring Summit. I'm Tom Pullman, your virtual MC. Thank you for joining us. We have 8 highly informative sessions spread across today and tomorrow, 2 each morning, 2 later in the day, giving you an ample break in between. And our theme for these 2 days is automation at scale. Automation, as you know, is a big, squishy topic, touching on so many facets of business and technology. But our clients have told us loud and clear that adopting a comprehensive automation strategy, a scalable approach to automation, is a top priority of theirs. So you're here today because your organization likely wants to accelerate its use of automation so that it can work faster, reduce errors and reduce risk, and to free up overburdened staff to focus on more meaningful, higher value work. So that's what we're going to talk about today and tomorrow. We'll start off today with Forrester analyst Craig LeClaire, taking on the big picture around what he calls the future of intelligent automation. AHEAD's own Dustin Grimison will then follow Craig with a pragmatic view of automation and where to start or restart your journey, with the mindset of grabbing quick wins all along the way. Before we jump in, I have a few simple requests. Submit questions anytime by clicking the QA icon underneath the video section. Each speaker will take questions at the end of their session. You can also download some interesting resources and content by clicking on the icon that looks like a little stack of papers. And by all means, please visit our sponsor booths to get some really great informative content about their solutions in the automation domain. They'll also be giving away some really cool gifts and prizes. And speaking of gifts, if you are kind enough to fill out our feedback survey, again, another icon on your console, you'll be entered to win one of 5 AirPod Max over-the-ear headphones. They are really cool, flying off the shelves, and we would, of course, love to get your feedback. So thanks again for attending. Please ask questions, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Craig LeClaire of Forrester Research.
Hey, thanks, Tom. That was a great introduction. I hope I can live up to it. Thanks for listening to this, the future of intelligent automation. This is an area that I spend a lot of my time thinking about. And, we're going to cover really 3 aspects of it in the 30 minutes that we have. And just what is intelligent automation? How has the pandemic affected investment in that, and kind of what your kind of clients are looking for and prospects and so forth. And then trying to drill down into really looking at an automation framework and highlighting the infrastructure and operations area, looking at the automation progressions in that specific area, and really providing kind of a framework that you can use to really evaluate and kind of assess almost any automation, independent of what area it's in, whether it's in marketing automation, sales automation, process automation, or infrastructure automation. And then with that, really focusing on what companies are doing to really deal with this surge in automation that's really taking hold, post-pandemic, and as we come out of this, it's just been amazing, the investments. And what companies are doing is they're building automation centers. They're building focused areas to really try to, govern, manage, and scale automation. So that's how we'll end up with that. So let's just go onto it. This is a very just a short setup slide. We had digital transformation that we've been talking about, certainly as analysts, for quite a while. And we had social and mobile disruption in the last decade. In 2010, 2011, the iPhone really kind of revolutionized mobility and so forth. We had new companies come in a very disruptive manner, like the Ubers of the world and Airbnb, leveraging these technologies to really, give us a new look at a sharing economy and really scare traditional brands in terms of how do we deal with this. So there was a lot of talk about digital transformation, but really not great progress. And the bottom line is transformation is really hard. But then we had the pandemic, and you see that lightning bolt there, and all of a sudden we were just forced to do all these things that we've been thinking about, contemplating, know was a good direction, but just really didn't happen. And that surge is what we're really dealing with. And what's happened is, with that, one of the aspects is that we've just had this support of remote work, which I'll talk about. We have new digital muscles that we had to create to do online shopping, to work virtually, and so forth. And there are going to be millions of pragmatic automations. that have already been started, some of which have completed into production, that are really going to be a focus for 2021. This is our assessment of what the work from home reality will be post-pandemic. So this is after we've settled down, we're optimistic in terms of the vaccination and so forth that there will be a return to normal. And what does that really look like in terms of the different types of workers that we have? And what we've done is mapped the 800 or 900 occupations that are tracked by the U.S. government and the National Bureau of Labor into these generic categories on the left that you see. And that's based on how the skills that that particular generic persona uses, right? So if you're a physical worker, as you see down there midway in the graph, you're focusing on your human agility. You're climbing ladders, you're moving things around. There's a whole set of physical skills that really define that occupation. Similarly, if you're a cross-domain knowledge worker, that's the highest level of cognitive work that's being done. And you're leveraging the ability to make connections across and among various information sets to really drive kind of more strategic decisions. Basically, you're seeing that the group of knowledge workers, cross-domain, single-domain, function-specific there, are going to really start to work from home on a permanent basis. This is no surprise. We've gotten used to that. You've seen the changes in the real estate market and the disbursement from major urban areas, so forth. That's going to continue. Net, you're going to have another 10, 12, 15 million workers in the U.S. economy that will be working from home and have to be supported. What this means is that you have to have support for that, and a lot of that support is automation. Now, when you look at the big change with that lightning bolt that occurred during the pandemic, and where companies have had to spend money and invest money, roadmap that they had to draw. And they had to draw this very, very quickly, as you recall, a year ago. And in that upper right, and like all 2x2s, that's where the interesting real estate is. This is where companies have had to double down for automation. They had to support that remote work as talked about. They had to support remote business. If you were a bank, and many mid-sized banks fell into this category, and you did not have the ability to take a mobile deposit, you couldn't do business, right? You had to figure out how to, do transactions that did not have physical signatures. You had to do all these things and had to do them immediately, right? So your whole acceleration zone there, tackling and automation that was required to deal with new fulfillment and ratcheted orders in e-commerce and so forth. So RPA, which I'll talk about a little bit, task automation got really, really hot. Text analytics to maybe extract structured data fields from unstructured content like forms and emails. People couldn't go into the office anymore. They couldn't go in and shuffle papers. So you had to really move that dial on the extraction of that type of content. So unfortunately, if you look at the losing momentum zone there, what you really had was a lot of the more transformational projects, such as the new omni-channel orchestration that you needed in order to find that perfect customer journey context and use predictive analytics to be able to provide the right information and the right actions at the right time. Those types of projects, long-term, big, they had to get shuffled to the side a little bit as we needed to focus on this more emergency and survivable type of automation. And really intelligent automation, because it is pragmatic. It has AI components, but they tend to be the practical ones because it's rooted in task automation, as you see here on this growth map here of kind of where we are, how we got to intelligent automation. It really started with RPA, which, I've been covering RPA since 2016 and did some of the early reports on it, which was really turned out to be a good thing because it really exploded into a major enterprise market. But it really was just doing really small snippets of effort that humans were doing, tasks. And that's really where it started. It turned out there were a lot of those, and that companies could replicate the activities of a human, very simply by building a bot to do that work. And it could do it based on some manipulations of the screen, that have been around with technologies that have been around for a while. So you could do that without any changes to the back-end core systems. So again, non-transformational, because you're not changing maybe that customer onboarding back-end that you needed to change, but you're really just extracting low-value human effort out in a very tactical fashion. So that became hot, but it wasn't enough. You really needed to combine that task automation with more intelligent forms. There's no learning in a RPA bot. It is simply deterministic. You're scripting the specific sequences of steps and activities. There's no comprehension. There's no learning. It is deficient in terms of moving to where automation is really moving. So the next step, the stage 2 here, is that enhanced digitization, combining natural language processing, some machine learning, to be able to create structured and normalized data fields that bots could then use. You could then inform or boss bots around with this extracted data that's now cleaner and much easier to get. That's sort of the phase 2. And phase 3 is really where intelligent automation is ultimately going, which is now I'm going to combine conversational intelligence, with decision management. So I'm going to understand the intent from the conversational intelligence. I'm going to maybe use predictive analytics, machine learning capability to affect the appropriate decision. And then I'm going to have action based on that decision, and maybe that'll be launch RPA bots. Maybe it'll be APIs to core systems. So that sort of combination of these pragmatic and more intelligent components is really what intelligent automation has come to mean. And the reason it's strong and important, why we're talking about it right now, is because in the recession we're in, which we hope to get out of soon, in the pandemic that we hope to get out of soon, this is exactly what the doctor ordered. Now, I won't go into this chart in detail, but what we tend to do, one of our report models at Forrester is what's called a tech tide. And it kind of tells our clients where they should be investing in today, where they should be experimenting, which is the lower left quadrant, where they should be maintaining, still providing high value, and when they should be divesting of a particular technology area. So this really defines, I wanted to give you just a sense of the breadth of when we say intelligent automation, what is it? Well, it's really about 19 or 18 different software markets, some of which have been around forever. I mean, workload automation, and I know, the folks listening to this are very strong in some of the mainframe and, automations and data center automations and so forth. That's been around for a long time, still providing very, very high value and a core automation capability. Same thing with API management and some of these maintain items. But some of the invest today that have a great promise for high business value, but maybe still a little low maturity, are the RPA components that we talked about. Digital process automation wide. So think of that as low-code process capability. Some of the areas around process mining and text analytics, these are very strong today, very, very important for customers. That's just a glimpse of what the overall intelligent automation landscape looks like. This is a kind of a silly slide. I apologize for the bouncing fonts there, but sometimes as an analyst you spend months and months on a report and it doesn't get read well. It doesn't go anywhere, such as life in the tropics. But other times you spend a couple of days on a report and it really flies off the shelf, basically. It becomes really an important document. This was the case with this rule of 5, because RPA was so interesting as a market and growing so much that there was a lot of misunderstanding about what it could do and what it couldn't do. So I just said, here's the 3 things. If you have this profile for a task, then RPA is the right thing. You have a small number of decisions, less than 5. There's no decision management that's built into these RPA design tools. Basically, decisions are simply scripted in short loops and comparisons and so forth. There's no rules engine. There's no dynamic rules management capability. The talent is manipulation of applications on a desktop, which is a great talent. You don't have to use APIs and do data integration. you can have a bot that actually mimics what Harry is doing in the back office, his keystrokes, windows that are being opened, time between windows. You can create a bot that does what a human does. That's really terrific. But you're manipulating the applications directly. There's a reason we designed and built APIs, was to insulate changes to the application from affecting the underlying code base that you had. That's why you have APIs. There's a direct manipulation of the applications with RPA bots. So they're very sensitive to application changes, bottom line. They fail when applications change in many cases. So keep the number of applications less than 5, and keep the number of clicks less than 500. And just to make that clear, this is a slide I won't go into, but these are typical RPA tasks. Look how short they are. And this is in payroll. A lot of the RPA is the sweet spot is in back office systems that haven't been upgraded. They're old versions of SAP and Oracle and so forth. They're proprietary systems that have been built. They're not the most coveted systems in an organization. They don't generate revenue. So there's a lot of inefficiency there, and the ROI for modernization is not as strong as it might be in, say, an e-commerce platform that drives revenue. So why not build a bot and just make them a little more efficient? But look how short these tasks are. 6 minutes here for human resources for that allocation updates, whatever that is. But it's done 900 times a year, So just do the math. How many minutes are being extracted? It's a very, very simple ROI. But the key is they have to be short tasks because you can't have variation. Bots don't have any intelligence, so they can't handle variation in today's mode. But it will handle variation in the future. So just a sense of kind of how we got into the RPA world. And what's happened is RPA has become kind of a necessary part of a broader portfolio because companies really need transformation. They need, they need to have a process capability designed for continuous improvement, which RPA wasn't. But BPM solutions, DPA solutions, some of the rules capability. So what's happening is the market's getting more fragmented as these intelligent automation suites come into play, add RPA to their portfolio, but now say, I'm just not an RPA guy like the alpha pure plays there. Now, I just don't do task automation. I do a broader transformation, right? And you can have RPA here, but it's not for everything. There are a lot of non-rule of 5 capabilities that you need. So anyway, the market's kind of gotten a little more decentralized, a little more fragmented, but it's a very interesting market. Let's go to the next center and dig into the sort of infrastructure and operations area. And one of the challenges that we've seen at Forrester that our clients have is just, how do you compare different types of automation? There's so many different types of automation, and it's very hard to compare them. And the answer is you create an automation framework. So, we looked at the challenges that companies have before we did that and said, some people don't know, what the product is really designed for. Is it configuration management, or is automation for release deployment? What was it really designed for? How do I rationalize my automation portfolio and understand what I have and what I can then offer to the business or offer to a particular department? And how about governance? Is it easier? What's the difference between governing chatbots versus a machine learning, capability? So we tried to develop a framework that would kind of get to that, and we found that there were really most companies. You could say that they had 8 different domains of automation. There was infrastructure automation, which we're going to drill into, but there's also automation in development, application development. There was automation in customer engagement. You think of that as AI maybe applied to omni-channel orchestration and so forth. You have sales automation, marketing automation, you have process automation. The RPA piece and the intelligent automation piece, that's part of that process automation world. And then you have industrial automation, factory automation and so forth. You have drones. So basically you have these different areas of automation, and if you drill into infrastructure automation, it's just been really fascinating to watch. I've been in the tech industry for a while, and it's just been fascinating to watch. And the reason automation is so important in the infrastructure world is because we keep building these abstractions that give us new capabilities and exciting capability. But each abstraction really creates a need to link it with the previous generation of abstractions. So you need now an automation layer to coordinate the different elements. Let me give you a couple of examples. So look at the virtualization really led us to being able to do cloud. If it wasn't for virtualization advancements, we would not be able to have the ability to coordinate on-premise and cloud-based work. So virtualization led to cloud. Cloud led to the need to make it more efficient by having containers, another level of abstraction. Containers led to the idea of a converged infrastructure and ultimately just serverless. So these are all just abstractions that allow us to manage this more increasingly complicated infrastructure that we have that's doing more and more incredible things, right? So the idea is how do you rationalize the automation that's needed in these areas? And so this is a very simple model that we put out that tries to do that. It basically says that there are 4 patterns of automation that every automation fits into. And some we've been dealing with for quite a while in the deterministic world, that software controlled. Think of that as basic workflow. We've been doing basic workflow automation in core systems for years, for 50 years. And that's where the highly deterministic, everything you expect to happen happens because you've built sequential code in a linear fashion to do it. All right. Now, where we're moving to patterns that get a little more sophisticated, like the employee-driven, where you have now, bots that Harry's manipulating in the back office to do his finance and accounting work, right? You have this combination of conversational intelligence, with decision management and bots and APIs that give you this new kind of digital assistant or employee robot. That's at level 2. And then as you move to level 3 and 4, it gets more interesting because you're starting to use the real power of AI at level 3, start making decisions. Machines are making decisions at level 3 in collaboration with humans, where a machine might create, use predictive analytics to create a set of recommendations. A human might look at them and pick one. Right? So you have humans and machines collaborating and sharing authority. We're calling that semi-autonomous. That, to me, is probably the greatest area of acceleration. And then, of course, you have level 4, which would be like a self-driving car where the machine's doing everything. And there you might be, leveraging deep learning to understand the physical world in ways that we can't at level 3. So the value of this is that a company can look at where they are, and they can categorize the framework I'm going to show you. They can categorize the automations that they have and say, I have 90% that are software-controlled level 1 patterns, and I have 5% employee-driven level 2 patterns. I have no level 3 and 4 patterns. I'm going to lose competitively to my competitors that have a greater percentage of automations at these higher level, more sophisticated patterns. So it's a way, if you think of moving to an autonomous enterprise, it's a way for companies to inventory that. And this is just to give you a sense of the employee robots at level 2 that we're seeing emerge. The pandemic just drove us to build employee self-service robots in human resources and IT service management in particular. So, you couldn't go into the office. You couldn't drop your laptop off at the 4th floor. You had to, ask the chatbot about that employee benefit. And these systems have been built, integrated in with success factors on the HR side, and the conversational intelligence patterns have been, understood and packaged, so they're getting out there. Same thing with IT service management. You're seeing the conversational pieces, essentially the robots, start to be very much integrated with ServiceNow and with a lot of the other their competitors. So that's just one category. You have these line of business knowledge and frequently asked support. These are digital assistants that are answering questions. and it, today's version is very stochastic. It just has a very simple conversational flow. But tomorrow's generation of that is going to be use much more decision-based analytics to be able to give real advice and have a much more dynamic, sense of the data that is part of that knowledge base. So we're seeing that develop quite a bit. So this is just a sense of the level 2. And the point of that pyramid is that as you move up to the level 4 patterns, you need to get better at all of these things. You have to have a perfect algorithm at level 4. You have to have, steps for bot mastery and for bot training, at levels 3, because you're now, part of the role of the human is interacting and managing and training, making the robot better. You need things like design thinking and digital worker analytics. Basically, I won't just read the slide, but your operations become much more significant. You need higher quality data. You need better governance. You need specific operating models. This is a way you can kind of understand the caliber of the automation that you're talking about. You can describe any automation with these 6 dimensions. How does it acquire data? How much learning and comprehension is involved? Does it have any? How much control does the company have or the application have? Is it highly deterministic or non-deterministic? How about governance and auditability capabilities? How about the operating effect on the people? And how much conversational intelligence is really involved? And you can develop what we call an equalizer. So basically, think of this. This is, for those of you who might have played in a band or, hung out in the back of a room at a concert, this is how they're controlling the mics that are on the amplifiers that the musicians have. And the reason you have somebody back there is because the tendency of the musicians on the stage is to turn their volume up because they have to be heard or they can't hear themselves or whatever. So the guy in the back is trying to keep control of that and with this equalizer, right? So a digression. But the idea is, you take a particular automation and, does it deal with unstructured data directly? Or does it only handle structured data? So RPA, as an example, only handles structured data. It can't deal with, you need NLP and text analytics as a front end to deal with unstructured data. Is there any comprehension and learning? Does it get refreshed data? And basically, based on that new data, are the statistical calculations done that give you a different outcome? That's a low-level learning capability. But is there any of that in the automation? How deterministic is it? What is the operating effect? Is it something that can be given to the business and designed and built there, or is it something that's very much centralized technology management? So I won't go through all of these as I get closer to time, but if you look at the infrastructure and automation technologies, and these are listed on the left here, these aren't all of them, it's not an exhaustive list, but you can basically build an equalizer, and we've done that, for each one of them. So you take a look at, hybrid cloud management. If you take a look at some of these areas, security analytics platform, and you can see how much, real learning comprehension, how deterministic is it, what kind of governance, how opaque is it from a governance standpoint. It can at least be a way that you can talk to the business or the potential user of this and say, this is what you're getting. You're asking us to put this in, and this is something that you'll have to maintain because it has that kind of operating model. It's something that introduces some level of transparency or non-transparency of the process that we'll have to worry about. It will be able to do some learning capability and enhance over time with regard to that. So this is just sort of a model that's pretty good. Now I'm going to fly through this last section because it's I'm getting close to my time, and I want to be respectful of the other speakers. But when you look at all this automation technology, so we've seen it's ramping up. The pandemic has made it ramp up even more. We're seeing that it's getting more complicated and complex as you move to those upper patterns. And the concern that companies have is that there are silos, that AI is coming in, particularly to their applications, even without them knowing it. It's coming in through upgrades to SAP. It's coming in to the CRM system, ServiceNow for IT service management, domain-specific vendors. It's coming in as a premium upgrade. So they have, platforms that are going to build AI solutions, but they're also AI coming in. So basically, without a lot of control, their environment's getting more automated and more capable, and that's a concern. And operations managers just need more data because workloads are enhancing. So what they're trying to do is to find an intelligent automation platform that is able to provide some orchestration and control over all these elements. And I won't go through the specifics here, but there is a focus on human in the loop. It's not just a task automation working independently. It's a task automation coordinating with humans. It's that level 3 pattern that we're talking about, where you have a human that might make a decision or a call based on some analytics that are come from the machine. This integration is not just about GUI integration with RPA. It's about API integration and ETL and iPaaS, and the ability to leverage bundled AI components from the cloud and so forth. So all of these need a level of orchestration, and it's really about work orchestration. It's about how do I get humans and machines working together. Now, to deal with this, a lot of companies are building these automation centers. We call them strike teams, but frankly, the term hasn't caught on yet. We hope it will. Automation centers are essentially made up of those roles on the right there: evangelizing automation, managing the guardrails, providing design authority, SME support to jumpstart projects. That's really the most important piece. So basically, you go to a department and say, you know what, you're building some conversational intelligence here. We're standardized on, pick a provider, Microsoft. So we want you to, here's a template for, building the conversational workflows. All right, and here's Sally, who's really good at it, and she'll help you. That's what the jumpstart aspect of it is. The bigger aspect is creating a process in the organization to scale automations. A lot of this automations is very expensive. So you want to be able to get ideation or ideas from the business and have a formal process to vet them and to direct them to the right automation technology and to the right SME. And that's what a lot of these automation centers are doing. They're kind of becoming the traffic cop for all the automation ideas because they're exploding. Everyone wants automation right now. And so this is a governance aspect, but it's also how do I get the most out of the investment? How do I scale? How do I get automations being developed in parallel in the organization? So these are, if you wanted to look into it at a later point, the strike team roles. More specifically, the lead, the robot architects, the design authorities. I'll leave that to you to look at. And this is sort of my last slide, and I want to just leave you with the opportunity here and put it into an economic context. We looked at our 2022 future of work model and said, what is the value of the automation that's going to be provided, extracted labor from the U.S. economy that automation is going to provide in terms of productivity? And it came out to a pretty big number. Now, we just focused on these. If you remember from my work from home slide, these 5 different personas, they're the real targets for intelligent automation, and they tend to be more knowledge and information management workers. Cubicle workers, they're workers in the contact centers, they're workers in the back office, coordinators, functions technology workers, knowledge workers. $130 billion of extracted value just in 1 year from leverage of these automation technologies we're talking about. It's something that organizations are not going to ignore. And with that, I'll just make a shameless plug for my book in 2019 about invisible robots in the quiet of the night that talks about the implications for the future of work and society for a lot of this automation that we're talking about. I want to thank you very much, and we'll open it up now for questions and answers.
All right, we will begin answering some of the questions you all have submitted during the session. If you haven't already, feel free to submit your questions into the Q&A panel underneath the media player. So Craig, I'll start with this one for you. What are the specific pandemic areas that have gained the most investment for automation?
Yeah, well, of course, you have the economic consequences of the pandemic, which have really hurt certain industries, obviously hospitality and oil and gas and others. And they've been, unable to make investments at the rate of the other ones. I would say financial services has been a real investment boom in automation. Basically, if you look at that last chart where you had that 130 billion extracted value, that's mostly in kind of that lower level cognitive type of work, and that's really more centered in the non-physical distribution, non-manufacturing, more in the information management and services world.
Awesome. Can you share some of the current AI practices and automation in the healthcare industry to your knowledge?
Well, putting the the investment in automation to support the pandemic concerns and health concerns, whether they be apps to track people and assess their health and so forth. Putting that that's been a huge investment in a lot of areas that companies have just really had to do. Beyond that, a lot of investment in manipulation of medical records that have become more and more concerned with the pandemic. So I would say that healthcare has seen a tremendous boom, but on the other hand, they've had economic struggles, obviously, to deal with the pandemic, the loss of revenue due to elective surgery and so forth that has really hurt their ability to spend money. But where they've had to spend it, it's been mostly pandemic-driven automation that.
Cool. And then this next one I got here, what are the most common pitfalls in using RPA for distributed automation?
Well, for distributed automation, I take that to mean automation that might be done in the business, without, more independently than sort of centrally, managed. And the pitfalls there, have to do with the security issues surrounding bots that have human credentials tend to be operating in our most trusted application areas. So there's a lot of concerns about governance and operating models that allow that to be vetted before they go into production, and that's still not there. The bigger, issue is just, what is it when you put these bots in various applications? Are you slowing down the progress to modernization for an application that should be just modernized? So a typical example is putting bots in one channel, that customers are interacting with that may prevent you from that roadmap you had to get to more of an omni-channel experience. It may prohibit you from moving to a cloud-based application that would give you more flexibility and agility and lower costs, but you've invested $500,000 in building bots in the on-premise version. So one of the real critical roles in this, and this is where those centers of excellence really come back to play, is that enterprise architect that's looking at the use of RPA in a very tactical context and what effect that will have on the overall progression of technology in the organization.
Okay, great. Yeah, it looks like maybe that user is not using APIs as some capabilities, or not exposed via APIs. So I appreciate your feedback there.
Yep. That's a big issue.
It looks like
Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Keep going.
No, I was going to say that's a conversation that gets dragged in a lot by enterprise architects is, when to use, APIs, when to use RPA. Should I wait and just do the right thing with the real data integration? Is it more sustainable down the road? Or do I get the business tension to get something done right away, which tends to drive you towards the RPA route? So that's a ongoing dialogue, very interesting dialogue in a lot of companies.
Awesome. So this next one we got here is, what is meant by DPA solutions? Don't know if you can expand on that a bit.
Yeah, so DPA stands for Digital Process Automation, and it's really workflow. So if you look at the origin of workflow, it started with really document imaging and moving electronic folders from step to step in kind of a production back office environment. Over time, it became business process management because it added more capabilities and started to do things cross-departmentally, not so much focused on the paper use case. We started calling it DPA, digital process automation, probably a couple of years ago, because we saw a kind of split in the market between low code process capability, which would be managed and done by the business, and what we call DPA Deep, which is a more complex professional development, IDE, if you will, or development environment that would be building more complex applications. So when we saw that kind of split in the market, we said, well, let's call it digital process automation, and let's divide it into DPA wide, which is low code, and DPA Deep, which is more centrally managed automation. That's basically workflow.
Awesome. Okay. It looks like we might be up for time here. So if we didn't get to your questions, we'll make sure to follow up with you after this session. Just another plug here for Craig's book, Invisible Robots in the Quiet of the Night. You can actually click the Amazon link in your related content section to purchase that on Amazon. But thank you so much to Craig for his session, and we truly thank you for your time today and your knowledge and expertise. But we will move on to the next session with Dustin Germisen on starting the journey to automation at scale. So we will see you in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all from Craig. Bye-bye now.